Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever we're hearing you from. I know we have a worldwide audience. Today, we are lucky to be joined by Georgia State House Representative Ruwa Romman. Romman made history in 2022 by becoming the first Muslim woman elected to the State House in Georgia and the first Palestinian elected to any public office in the state. Now, today, she is sharing some special news with us today as she launches her bid to be governor of the state of Georgia in a very crowded field on both the Democratic and increasingly on the Republican side. Firstly, Representative, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. So let's get right into it. You are pledging what you call a new kind of politics. What's exactly wrong with the old, and what is this new politics that you're bringing to the table?
So I think we have really lost the spirit of campaigning. I think we've really lost the spirit of politics, which is a people powered, people centric type of work. Because the reality is that politics and government is supposed to be a representative body of the citizens that it is meant to represent. And between special interests and everything else, we have become very, very disjointed from people. And so what we are launching is big. I understand it is Georgia. I understand, but also I know my state and I love my state. And there's so much opportunity here. And so I'm running to build a movement of people that is organized, that is all around the state, that centers the things that we need the most. And so the platform is one that anyone can talk about. It's raise the minimum wage, reopen hospitals, invest in small businesses, take homes back from corporations, and feed hungry kids.
Got it. Okay. Okay. And so let's get a bit more into the sort of like rhetorical aspect of where you maybe see the old falling short, because there's the policy aspect, there's the rhetorical aspect, and I know you touched a bit on both, but I like to get into specifics of both buckets as well. When you look at the party as it stands now, the Democratic Party, and you reflect on how things have gone for the past few months, past few years, decades even, what do you see as deeply frustrating to you that it prompted you to jump in to run for governor?
Absolutely. So right now there seems to be this idea that if a candidate checks off a bunch of check marks as it relates to everything from identity to inside politics, whatever the case might be, right? Then they are the best person to carry the mantle for the party. But what we are seeing is that the candidates currently in the field are struggling to gain traction. In fact, if you compare sort of our launch responses to theirs, it is a very, very different dynamic. We have people who are responding saying things like, I was kind of out this year. I don't want to be involved anymore. It's hopeless, this sort of cynicism, this nihilism. And again, our platform is a very people centric, basic one almost. You hear it and you're like, well, what's so special about this? But what's special is how we are approaching people. We are treating them like they are serious partners in the work that we are doing, that we don't need to tell them what is best for them, that we actually want to build together with them. And so when I say that the old politics of old don't work anymore, it's because I think as Democrats, we become too cautious. We think we have to decide and control how primaries go, how everything else goes, and then it might work for our favor. But the reality is that if people don't pick you, you're not going to succeed. And so, how do we make sure that the people picking us are those that we need along the entire journey?
Hmm. On that note of caution, of course, last year we were covering the Democratic Convention in Chicago, where a lot of drama unfolded related to the Uncommitted movement, which was a group of voters across the country who were seeking to push the Democratic ticket to take a somewhat more reasonable approach to Israel's genocide in Gaza and U.S. support for it. Uncommitted DNC delegates, voters, various groups, they sought to encourage dialogue about the war at the convention, and they also sought, namely, to have a Palestinian voice represented on stage. Now, you were amongst the names that were floated as possibly speaking on stage, and you even prepared a speech to endorse Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And yet, the convention did not welcome a Palestinian voice to the stage. How do you reflect on that specific moment? Do you see it as a party failure? And what do you think it represents more broadly about the party apparatus?
Liking this video? Then don't just watch, hit like, share and subscribe. And tap the bell so you never miss a video or live show. But if you want early access to exclusive content, then you have to head to Zeteo.com and subscribe now. You'll be supporting fearless, independent journalism.
Yeah, I think there are just too many people making decisions that are completely disconnected from reality. We had poll after poll, and to this day, to this moment, poll after poll that continues to show us that the majority of the Democratic base, and now the majority of independents and an increasing number of Republicans, not only view what is happening as a genocide, but do in fact support us ending support for Israel in this ongoing genocide. And so it's not as if what we were pushing for was going to hurt the party. I actually think it would have completely helped the party, because if you notice, before the convention, ever since VP Harris sort of became the front runner, right, in the race to replace Joe Biden, you saw this incredible explosion of excitement. People were signing up to volunteer again. You had people donating again. You had sort of this like groundswell that we had been desperate for up until that point. And it really felt like up until that convention that there was a lot of hope. And for those who don't remember, there were CBP agents on that stage, right? Customs and Border Patrol. We had Republicans on that stage. We had CEOs on that stage. We had every possible spectrum of this like large and contradictory coalition, and yet nothing, not even 2 minutes for a Palestinian speaker. And I want to pause here, because it's not about the speaker. And it's just like it's not about necessarily like when you ask voters, when you poll them, it's not that Gaza becomes the number one priority for them. It's usually things like affordability and how to get by in this really more difficult economy. But it's become a litmus test, a sort of gut instinct of, if you can't even be honest about what is happening right in front of our eyes, how can I expect you to have my back and be honest about the situation that we're in? And so it kind of became a proxy for these two things. And, frankly, that disconnect is pretty egregious. I had when we launched, I had a few people that said, well, like, obviously this is very crazy. How can you even think that you've got a chance here? And I said, we have an ex-Republican running as a Democrat right now. He was our ex-lieutenant governor, also had space on the DNC stage, and I did not. But the reality of the situation is that I've won in Georgia as a Democrat. And not only did I win, the governor endorsed against us last year, and we did better than the years prior. And so my hope is that the party sees what we're able to build. And again, this depends on if we can build it, right? This is why we kind of took this leap of faith that there are more of us out there. There are so many more of us out there that believe this way. What if we showed them that power? What if we coalesced that power and built an apparatus that changes the dynamics of politics, not just in Georgia, but around the country?
Hmm. You mentioned one of your primary opponents who used to be a Republican, Jeff Duncan. This week, he was asked by Jennifer Welch of I've Had It about whether he was going to take money from AIPAC. He was unable to answer clearly at all. I'm not sure if you saw this. I'm sure you might have. How do you perceive that refusal to answer? Jennifer, to her credit, one thing she was kind of getting at is that this is almost 2 years into this genocide that any flavor of human rights group at this point has spoken out on it. And she just felt she appeared so frustrated by Jeff Duncan's refusal to simply answer whether he was going to take money from AIPAC. So how do you feel like that refusal relates to your frustrations to these old politics, given, as you say, he had a speaker slot?
Yeah. I mean, and again, it just goes to show how out of touch a lot of people have become. And look, I'm an elected official, right? My colleagues, we spend a lot of time together. We have to, by nature of our jobs. Democrats spend a lot of time with Democrats. And so sometimes you end up in a bubble. And that's why it's so important to constantly be speaking to voters. And when I saw that clip, I remember very clearly thinking, there's so many weird things going on here. First, this seems to me as if it's a no-brainer, because this is a gubernatorial race, not a federal race. He could have just easily and simply said, no, I will not be taking that money because I legally cannot. This is a completely different jurisdiction. And so then that made me wonder, why is he refusing to say no? Has he been approached by people that are interested in supporting his campaign? And again, this is the bad part about politics. Ever since Citizens United, which was the case that's allowed unlimited money, you have candidates who are scared of saying this. Look, I'm gonna have to spend a lot of hours on call time just to make this a remotely viable campaign. I'm not gonna pretend money doesn't matter. But the argument I've been trying to make to my colleagues is that if you can bring something authentic to the table and you're able to really push for an honest, frankly, policy position, you can go a really long way. Because if you notice during that clip, sort of Jen got really frustrated because she said, you explain this incredibly important and clear moral compass. You say what is happening is terrible. Why are you not sort of then committing to this very specific position? Because again, we don't know exactly who's backing Jeff Duncan, and I actually, my unpopular opinion here is that we do want to welcome everybody to the fold. The question, though, and the sort of trick to that is, But you have to support our policies. You have to support where we stand here. You can't just come in and change, kind of like being invited to a party. You can't just come in and change the music and the decorations and everything else. You got to kind of earn your stripes. And so, in a moment of like fascism, yes, we need a broad coalition. But again, why are you the party leader in the state? And if you can't say no to APAC money, and there's plenty of other APAC adjacent PACs as well, I don't know what's going on there. What conversations you've been having, and why has it stopped you from being able to say an emphatic, "I will not be taking this money"?
Got it. Got it. And also, just a reminder for all the viewers that are watching right now, please, we'll try as much as you can. If you have any questions or thoughts, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll try to address as many as we can with the limited time we have here tonight. So just wanted to remind you all that you have that option. You talk a bit about coalition building. And there's a few aspects to this that I'm sure have been on your mind as you've been mulling over launching this race at all, or launching your candidacy at all in the first place. The first aspect is that you're coming into a very crowded Democratic field, one that may even grow larger, with some prominent names, putting aside Duncan, there's a few other big names as well. How do you anticipate breaking through firstly in the primary and building a coalition that can take you through the primary?
I mean, look, if you look right now at the response to our campaign, we've already broken through. I mean, when we have been speaking all day, actually, I've been speaking to specifically local media to reach as many voters as possible. But frankly, you mentioned the DNC. That was a moment that I think a lot of people were introduced to me, but it wasn't all the work I've been doing. I've been organizing in the state for over 10 years. I have, at the time I had gotten an EMS bill almost passed. I mean, it made it all the way to the Senate rules, which was the second to last step to a vote. So this work has been ongoing in our state for a very, very long time. And so to your question about, how are we trying to find ourselves? How are we trying to sort of get to people and break out of this primary? I really think by nature of the positions I've taken in the past, the fact that there has been a lane wide open that nobody is taking. There is a coalition out there that people are desperate to look for. We've been getting emails, messages, phone calls from people saying, I finally feel like I can vote for somebody. I finally feel like I'm excited about a campaign. There are people making videos about it. It's been just such an incredible thing to watch because when you make a jump like this, it's terrifying. You're thinking, I'm about to jump off a cliff, off into a canyon, and I think there's a net there, but I'm not sure. And what today has shown me is that it's there. We just got to organize it, and that there are a lot of people desperate for a moment like this.
Mm, mm. I just want to acknowledge Susan McDonald, who just commented that she wishes she could understand more of the terms that we're using. Nevertheless, she's trying her best. We appreciate you, Susan, for being here, and we'll try to inform you as best as we can. Thank you. On that note, representative of coalition building, I hear you. And then there's also the aspect as well of, let's say you win the primary.
Mm-hmm.
You then have a general election. And so how do you feel that, if at all, plays into your calculus or the way that you think about this coalition building? I know you talk about the idea of welcoming people in, yet also kind of holding on to the tentpoles of your sort of vision. How do you envision that, practically speaking, in terms of broadening the coalition when it comes to a general election?
Yeah, we have some really big goals in terms of volunteer recruitment to be able to reach people all across the state. And this is why, to give her all of the credit and all the flowers, Stacey Abrams got the closest out of anybody in 2018 because she did mobilize that base. But you can't mobilize sort of an army of volunteers if you're not offering them policy positions that they can really hang on to, and of moral clarity, frankly. And so we want to replicate that same mobilization. We want to replicate that same endeavor, but start it earlier. We want to start recruiting volunteers right now. We want to start communicating out to voters right now instead of waiting until sort of June, July, when in the past, that's really when the big general elections kind of kick up and, money comes into the race and things like that. And so this is why we're starting in September. This is why we're thinking of a primary, not just as sort of the end goal, but part of achieving that end goal. And again, I get it. It is Georgia, but there is a strong anti-war coalition in our state. As I've mentioned, there are folks who are independent. There are folks who are even Republican that are opposing this genocide in Gaza. And for a lot of them, they have begun to see this, as I've said before, as a litmus test of, can I trust you to stand up for me? And if I'm up against a billionaire on the other side, if I'm up against one of the many people that have continued to sell us out and not even to the highest bidder, I think that goes a long way, particularly for those on the margins. And in a state this close, we've tried it. I want to be clear. We have tried the stereotypical, let's put a safe candidate and run them and pray for the best. We have tried that every time in Georgia. It's not working for the gubernatorial. And what if we got to lose? We've already lost. What else do we have to lose?
Mm, mm. On that note, of course, there have been some good moments for Democrats recently in Georgia, namely John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. I know you have, as well have helped in the past in organizing and training volunteers to organize for them. What lessons are you learning from their candidacies? I know, of course, they are running for the Senate, not the governor, but nevertheless, there was some I think, lessons and promising moments from both those candidacies. I think a lot of people within the party really looked glowingly upon. So I'm wondering if there are parts of those campaigns that stick with you.
Absolutely. So I've been organizing in the state for over 10 years, and part of that organization meant talking to voters. I don't know how much y'all are familiar with Georgia, but I grew up in what's called Forsyth County, Georgia. I graduated from South Forsyth High School, the same high school as Marjorie Taylor Greene. So this is not someone who's, grown up in the metro area all her life and, all of that. I'm very well aware of what our state is. And I think what Warnock and Ossoff did in particular is that they were able to show our base that they are fighting for the base, right? Even most of their votes right now, compared to other, right? Like compared to completely other senators and their colleagues, their votes have actually been better than theirs, even in safe blue states. And what I tell them is that part of that is that they understand the coalition required to win in a state like ours, one that is forward thinking, one that is centered on, as silly as it sounds, what's right in this moment, and being able to stand up. And has it been perfect every time? Of course not. Nobody's going to be perfect. But I've seen both of them on the campaign trail, and I've seen both of them fight for every vote, and I've seen them at bare minimum, right? Sit with the people who oppose them. Have meetings with people who oppose them. Take a moment to speak with those who might not agree with them from the beginning. And that goes a very long way. And when I said earlier about the politics of old, I mean, there is a part of politics of old that I want to make new again, which is that engagement of coalition members that are different than you, because it just goes such a long way in a state like ours.
Hmm. You mentioned some positive aspects, specifically with regards to organizing that you took from Stacey Abrams' campaign, which of course was a very narrow loss to Brian Kemp. Nevertheless, it was a loss in a race that some people felt a bit more optimistic about those chances. So I'm wondering if you and your campaign have also reflected on other aspects of her campaign that you can learn from to not replicate a loss this time.
Well, first and foremost, we're not running against an incumbent. And I want to be clear, the run from 2018 is the reason we won in 2020. And this is, I think, something that people forget about down ballot races is that, and I say down ballot even though it's a gubernatorial race, but down ballot races do play a massive part in the top of the ticket. By being able to talk to voters about why their conditions are the way that they are, it actually makes the path easier. And so, as much as I hate to say this, and it is true, and I've heard some colleagues say, well, we're definitely gonna have a good year next year, but there's gonna be a lot of destruction. And we've already seen a lot of this destruction from the federal government right now as it relates to Trump's policies and his entire administration. But the question is going to be, can we actually talk to voters to explain to them why they are feeling the squeeze that they are feeling? Why are things the way that they are? And that's how you break through, in my personal opinion. I think to get very tactical here, when you try to organize people, viral videos do not make movements. I cannot stress this enough. A viral video does not make a movement. But the question is, what are you calling people to do through your videos? What are you calling them to do through the work that you are doing? And if you're able to take that and build a pipeline of activism and engagement, that's going to go a long way. And so the question is, and sorry, down ballot just means when you're looking at your ballot when you're voting, you have like, it's just the order of the races. And so in a situation like this one, it's usually president, any members of Congress, so that's Senate, member, your House representative, and then you go to the state level, and it starts with governor, all of our constitutional offices, and then state House, state Senate, etc. And so we call that down ballot. And for that down ballot work to actually happen, you need to be able to reach those voters directly too. It's going to require money, but I also think it's going to require people. And for a while now, Democrats have gotten really good at raising the money, but we've left the people behind, and it's time to fix that.
Hmm. Unfortunately, we're also in a society for which this question is one that candidates have to face. And I'll put it quite bluntly, because I'm sure you've entertained it quite bluntly too, which is Georgia ready for a Palestinian woman wearing a hijab to be governor?
I have thought a lot about how to even answer this question because I did grow up here and I'm not naive to the forces at play in our state. But every single moment in our history, a state, a place, a country has not been ready until you make it ready. And so for us, the challenge is going to be, can we explain to voters what this looks like? So someone actually today asked me this question. They said, what do you think is going to change culturally if someone like you is governor? And then they kind of walked it back and said, I don't mean culturally in the sense of, religion or whatever. But I said, you know what, let me answer both of those. Because what we want to be able to paint a picture for people that I am somebody who, the way I describe it is I want to bring back porch sitting. I want to bring back a time when you didn't have to work 2, 3 jobs and could sit on your porch and talk to your neighbor. I want to be able to say that, you know what, the person in the governor's mansion is fighting for me and not their corporate friends. And so are they ready for a hijab wearing Muslim woman who's also Palestinian to take the helm of our state? That is obviously going to be the question of this moment. But I think the better question is, can we afford another 4 years of Republican rule where every time our senators and our members of Congress have brought money to the state, we haven't been able to see the benefit of that? That's why rural hospitals have closed. That's why we are seeing the minimum wage still at $5.15 an hour, by the way. If you look at Georgia's books, our minimum wage is $5.15 an hour. And so, yeah, we have the federal minimum wage, but you gotta raise up the floor a little. And so being able to talk to voters, I think, about those things, there is a way to be able to get around that. And like I said, not completely, but I grew up here. And if there's one distinction I've learned, is that there are people who are militantly hateful, not much you can do there. But there's actually a lot of people who are just ignorant. And I found talking to my neighbors and to my friends and to my family and just growing up in the state that talking to people just goes a really, really long way. And in a digital environment, in a place where I've kind of grown up as a digital native almost, I just think there's a lot of opportunity there to bridge that gap too.
Yeah. I'm curious, state house members have a lot of different places they can go when they're seeking higher office. Why did you want to run for governor?
Um, because this is a moment where politics does not make any sense. If you ask anybody, they will tell you. Normally, the advice that's given to somebody like me is wait a few terms, build your resume, build up your name ID, and then make that big leap. And it's so funny because when I've talked to a lot of people about this, very few of them have actually brought up my identity because I think they're starting to understand that to build a coalition to win, you got to show how it all works. But there was a moment where somebody said to me, that, yeah, I agree with, because I said that. I said, I feel this, like, burn inside of me, this, like, urge that we're not meeting this moment. And when I say this, I mean as Democrats, I mean as politicians, I mean as leaders, however you wanna name it. We are not meeting this moment. There's an urgency in this moment that requires us to throw everything we have at the wall. And if that means, do I need to run? Do I need to do this? Because at some point, you gotta stop complaining from the sidelines. At some point, if you think you can do it better, you gotta jump in and do it better. And so one of the things that was said to me was like, you're right about the urgency of this moment. You're actually right about this sort of kind of going any which way in a crazy environment that we're in today. But if nothing else, as we build this movement, somebody can look at me and go, if she has the audacity to run for governor, I can run for state house. I can run for county commissioner. I can run for city council. I can run for any of these positions because if I'm elected governor, we're going to need to flip the state house and the state senate. We're going to need to bring that movement in with us to govern. We're going to need them to be able to pressure my colleagues to do the policies and pass the policies we're trying to pass. And so I totally hear the question, but at the same time, I just always wonder, like, what if we just could finally believe in something different, and how far can we go if we did?
Hmm. Hmm. I'm curious as well, specifically with regards to fulfilling the roles of a governor. You mentioned over the past 8 months specifically, the amount of damage we've seen from the federal government that can be done. Everything from, of course, seeing masked agents roaming our streets with little accountability, becoming more and more armed and less accountable by the day. The slashing of FEMA funding, which of course is especially a concern for a state like Georgia. How do you view the role as being the principal of the state executive, both in terms of, as you say, looking downwards and working with the coalitions of state house members to pass things, but also looking upwards in defending Georgia from federal overreach?
Yeah, I mean, I had a reporter today ask me that too, where I said, I'm not out here looking for a fight. But when you have a Palestinian representing you, you're never going to have somebody who backs down from a fight. And so the question for us, and we actually saw this model in Illinois with Governor Pritzker, where he sort of built this coalition who very forcefully rejected Trump's intrusion into Illinois. And right now, that's not what we're seeing with our governor. We just had a massive raid at the Hyundai plant, and we're getting these random sort of messages that it's going to only be delayed. It's not completely shut down. And for those who don't know, there's a big Hyundai plant that was frankly sort of pushed onto the local constituents, and it's here and it's being built. And it's kind of like when you're opening up a franchise. You bring a team that knows what they're doing, they build it out, and they train the people who are going to be working that location. This was expected to bring 8,000 jobs to Georgia, and ICE raided it. They were looking for 4 people. They took almost 500, and the governor just disappeared. I've never seen the governor not address something like this before. He's always doing press conferences. He's always at the Capitol. He's sort of always around, and he just completely disappeared. That's unacceptable. At a time like this, when people are so scared, and we're talking about 8,000 families that are now going to go into the holiday season who thought they were going to be able to apply for these jobs and get these jobs, that don't know what the future is going to hold. And so what would a Governor Romman do in that moment? A Governor Romman would very much forcefully oppose what just happened, be honest with our constituents that these people were here with documents. They were here to train up our people and open up a facility they were not going to be working in long term. But instead, because of just how far right and extreme sort of that coalition has become on immigration, he instead decided to hide. And so, they're trying to do diplomatic, sort of behind the scenes work. They're trying to keep some of that work here. They said that they were able to expand the number of jobs, but we haven't seen that just yet. There's no understanding of when this is going to reopen. But that's just one of the many, many ways that we would have to step up and do things differently.
Mm. Finally, just to close out, I know we're running on time here. Let's say you win. What are some of your week one? I think day one is trite. What are some of your week one and month
I love
one priorities?
Yeah.
Any particular targets? Any fixations?
Yes.
What's on your immediate list?
There's a reason we have those 5 things on our list, which is raise the minimum wage, feed hungry kids, reopen hospitals, take homes back from corporations, and invest in small businesses. Because as governor, we can appoint what's called floor leaders. These are sort of our legislative liaisons, where we write out a policy agenda and they introduce those bills on our behalf. I actually personally don't like it as a legislator, but hey, if that's what they've set up, that's what they've set up. And be able to work with those floor leaders and push through specifically those 5 goals, everything as it relates to those 5 goals. The minimum wage is a bill that we could pass tomorrow. Expanding Medicaid is a bill that we could pass tomorrow. And a choice is being made not to. And I cannot stress that enough. A choice is being made not to because we have other Republicans that support this. And so week 1 for us is to have that policy agenda ready to go. Those, bills ready to go that we can literally file. When you say day 1, it actually is possible to file them, not just on day 1, but pre-file. And so as governor, in addition to that, we get what's called a leadership committee, which is, again, we need campaign finance reform, but you can coordinate on that committee and leverage it to pressure people to vote for your bills. The governor recently used it to provide liability shields for corporations. What if we used it to raise the minimum wage in Georgia?
There you have it. Ruwa Romman, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Everyone who's watching, thank you for joining us. And good luck on your race. We hope you join us again soon.
Thank you so much. And for those who are interested, you can follow us along. It's Ruwa, RUWAFORGEORGIA.com. That's where you'll find all the different ways to get involved. But thank you all so much for having me tonight and welcoming me to your community.
Thank you. Good luck.
Bye, y'all.
Did you like this video? Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel and turn on notifications. For exclusive content and to support our independent, unfiltered journalism, head over to Zeteo.com. Your support matters.